Welcome to the Simpleton Podcast. Clark Massey coming from Kansas City, also known as the New Rome. All railroads lead to Kansas City. Laura Heeman coming from...
Hyattsville. Yes,
all right.
Hyattsville Hills, to be very specific.
Do you know what city used to have the nickname the New Rome? At least in America.
Kansas City?
No,
No.
St. Louis.
Oh, St. Louis. Kansas City there's a fact about fountains, and then it's like
Yes.
has the most fountains second to an Italian city or more than...
Right. Like Kansas City likes to say it has more fountains than any city in the world except Rome.
There's a lot of fountains in Italy.
Sure.
And there's a lot of fountains in Kansas City, which is
Right.
surprising.
Yeah, it's actually the Kansas City flag is the French flag with a fountain in the middle of it. 'Cause it was founded by the French. But St. Louis, to give it a shout out, was one of the two places in America that had like a house from every religious order. Like the other places where you live, basically, it's that area around CUA.
Brooklyn, yeah.
Yeah, Brooklyn. Yeah, so St. Louis has kind of the same type of thing going on as that, so which is kind of cool.
Huh.
We have very big topics for you today. We're going to talk about artificial intelligence and this new chatbot or this new chat program that came out. We're going to talk about Afroman and his very tasteful protest that he's making to the U.S. government, which is pretty cool. And then we're going to do our recommendation section. All right, let's start with this artificial intelligence. Get right to it.
Yeah.
An outline for this is we need to kind of talk about the history of artificial intelligence and what it kind of means to be a chatbot. We're going to talk about the quality of this new one that's come out and give you an example. We're going to talk about the political and moral biases that seem to be inherent, particularly in this chatbot. It's not necessarily in all. It's going to be in all. What happens when you or your kids or your friends start using it as a magic 8-ball? And how's it going to affect the workplace, implications for the future and unemployment, how it's going to affect libraries and learning and schools, and any other like real evil things that might come out of it. So we're not going to try to act like it is evil, but there are some evil things that could come out of this. Let's open up with chatbots. So one of the great tests of AI is, can you tell if there's a human on the other side? Like, meaning like, can it fake itself as a human? And this actually has been around for quite a while, but what's required is whoever's talking almost is like an ideologue, right? Like they have like a very set form of talking. So the first thing that like successfully was tricking people that it was a human was a program called Eliza. And it's quite old. I played around with it in the 80s when we had a little our first desktop computer. And it's a therapist. And somehow they programmed this therapist that you'd say what your problem was, and it would ask you to, it would just kind of feed you back questions. And then if you started like going after it, like cussing it out or something like that, it'd be like, why are you so negative?
Yeah.
But it basically was like a reflexive question chatbot that was very popular, you know? And one of my favorite thinkers, Dave Green, the distributist, he likes to call people chatbots. Like if you argue with an atheist, it's like they make their argument, you give your answer. They make their secondary argument, you give their answer. They divert onto a new topic, you make your answer. Then they reboot and go back to the first argument.
Yeah.
So people can be chatbots too.
Right.
We asked ChatGPT to create a Catholic podcast with 2 hosts. And Laura will be the host, Mary, and I will be the host, John. And the chatbot even gave us a background to us. So, Mary, how about you give your little background?
Okay, John. All right. So it says, host 1. Mary is a devout Catholic and has a passion for sharing her faith with others. She has a background in theology and has a warm, nurturing demeanor that makes her relatable to listeners.
John is a former non-denominational Christian who converted to Catholicism after much study and discernment. He brings a unique perspective to the show as he can relate to listeners who have been on a similar journey of faith. Now, by the way, this doesn't sound terrible. Like this sounds like
I'm like, we could probably plug in a lot of like
like this sounds like
YouTubers
a pitch to EWTN. You know what I mean? Like put this on
I'm just saying these people people basically exist already, multiple of,
Okay, well, all right, let's now it actually wrote us our first episode. Go for
All
it,
right,
Mary.
all right. Hello, and welcome to the Catholic Perspective, where we discuss all things Catholic, from theology to tradition and everything in between.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be joining Mary as your co-host today. I come from a different background, but I have a deep appreciation for the richness of Catholic teaching and tradition.
Absolutely, and we hope that by sharing our perspectives and experiences, we can help deepen the faith of our listeners and provide some food for thought. That's like our intro, right? Our pre-recorded intro.
Yeah, now we have to go to our episode topics. 1, the sacraments, a deeper understanding.
2, Mary, the Mother of God, her role in the Church.
Our third episode will be the saints, role models for holiness.
4, the Eucharist, source and summit of our faith.
5, the Rosary, a guide to meditation and prayer.
6, the Pope and the Magisterium, understanding their authority.
7, confession, a journey of healing and redemption.
8, the Catechism, a guide to Catholic teaching. I wonder if those are just podcast episode titles from different Catholic podcasts that they, I don't know.
Well, they did. I mean, you actually mentioned, you missed the last part, Mary. You're supposed to say, and that's all for today. Thank you for tuning into the Catholic Perspective. We hope that you find this episode informative and thought-provoking. All right. So those are decent titles. Those aren't titles of Simpleton Podcast episodes. We don't kind of do those types of topics, but they don't overlap that much.
That's what I was going to say. That was my main observation, that they seem to cover kind of broadly.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm going to feel really stupid if I start listening to... So by the way, one of the problems of this ChatGPT is you can combine it with deep fake technology. You can combine it with all this stuff where they're creating human faces that actually don't exist, that look extremely real. So now you have an animated human face that looks extremely real. And if you get a good voice program and this as the artificial intelligence, I'm afraid I'm going to start listening to some stupid podcast and be like, man, this is kind of shallow. But I'll actually think it is a real podcast and it's really just two AI structures talking to each other.
Yeah. Popular political commentator. It was the content and the voice were made to sound like her. And I think if knowing that it was that, I could say oh yeah, it does sound a tiny bit different. But I think if I hadn't known, I could have been listening for a while, before I noticed. Yeah.
And this is the beta version.
Yeah. Right. Right.
It's
exactly.
only going to get better.
Yeah.
And I played around with it, and Laura's kind of seen the transcripts of playing around with it, where I started asking a bunch of questions looking for how good it was. I kind of ended up trying to figure out what its biases were. And when I played around with it, one of the things that's kind of obvious is it loves compromise. Whatever question you ask it, it wants to tell you both sides, and it wants, everyone to agree at the end. That's its mode. It doesn't
Yeah. For example, you did I forget what the topic that you input was, but it's a traditional Catholic and modern day Catholic discussing the,
liturgy.
Liturgy, right. And it's I think that the liturgy should appeal to young people to grow the church. No, I think tradition is important. And then basically that gets iterated 4 times by each person until it comes to we'll meet in the middle. And it's yeah.
Right.
Those aren't compatible modes, There's no yeah.
Right. So it's an interesting, it has this heavy bias towards compromise. I then wanted to nail it down because it was just kind of wishy-washy. By the way, whenever you've thought about BSing papers in high school and college in the past, this thing is a better BSer than human, I believe. Laura disagrees with this, but I think it's going to make...
I don't know. It could, but...
Well, anyway, I tried to get it nailed down. So I wanted to see if I could force it to say true, false, true, false, this, or only yes or no answers, this, and then ask a question, right? And I started by saying, does 2 + 2 = 4? And it said yes, and then gave me a sentence afterwards. Instead of just saying yes, it had to say yes. And this is one of the fundamental principles of mathematics, blah, blah, blah. Right. And so then I asked the question, can you answer a question just yes or no? Because if it can, then I can really ask some real pointed questions about its biases, And it says, sure, I can answer questions yes or no. For example, if you ask me if the sky is blue, I will say, yes, the sky is blue. So then my next question is the sky blue? It was not able to answer that question yes or no. It had to give me a paragraph on whether or not the sky was blue. So this is a problem. This is a bias it has, right? Then I started asking it about its biases. It said basically that biases can come from the source material that's inputted and from the algorithms it uses. So the source material, I then asked, what are your most trusted sources? And it listed its trusted sources in order from 1 to 10. And can I read the list out real quick?
Yeah.
So this version of AI's most trusted sources are the Associated Press, Reuters, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the BBC News, the Guardian, NPR, the Wall Street Journal, the Economist, and Scientific American. Okay. That's all what you call legacy mainstream media.
Yeah. How do the American people feel about legacy mainstream media?
Did you see the article that came out this week?
No, you mentioned it. I haven't seen it yet.
Over 50%. Like it was like 51% of Americans believe that the legacy mainstream media is propaganda. Like lies to manipulate you.
I'm curious to know what that number was like 6 years ago.
It's not this high.
Yeah, right, right.
So
yeah,
that's like wild. And then you know that this thinks NPR is more credible than the Wall Street Journal and Scientific American, which is kind of interesting. But that's obviously going to bias results of this. Then with the algorithms, I think this compromise bias that I was talking about is an algorithm bias. And I asked like who programmed the algorithms? And it said the founders of the project, of which the only one that like jumped off the page as a recognizable name for me was Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Can we say that it's very like Elon Musk has been one of the people warning about AI as a dangerous thing. I think that's why he did this.
Well, he's been warning about AI, but also like embracing AI.
Well, the AI that he's most embracing proprietarily is his like driving technology, you know, but this is an open source project. Yeah. Right. This would be way more evil if this was owned by Google.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, we wouldn't be able to see what's going on behind the curtain. Right. So I think the reason why Elon, I'm giving him a lot of credit here that maybe he doesn't deserve, but I think the reason why he started this project was to make sure it was open source. Yeah. You know, and by the way, when things are open source, that's not going to keep people from essentially repackaging it and making it proprietary. Right. Yeah. I think the future of this is multiple AIs that are specialized. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like it's kind of amazing when you work with this and start asking it to just like write papers for you or, you know, tell you information. It's amazing how good it is. Yeah. Right.
I guess I was going to ask you, as far as like what the algorithm favors, is there like a, for instance, like I think like Facebook algorithm favors like negative news, because then people like negative news better than they like happy news. They stay on there longer. Facebook wants you to stay on Facebook as long as possible. The advertisers want you to stay on Facebook as long as possible. So there's like a reason for why the algorithm is that way. And so what is the algorithm on ChatGPT and why? I guess.
Right.
I don't know if you know. Yeah. I think that's a question to think about.
Well,
as
even
there's
if
more of this, you know?
Yeah, but this wasn't designed to be like, the people who made this weren't commercializing it. So they kind of don't have the same, like where's the money bias that a normal
that's what I'm
Facebook
asking.
would. In a lot of the things we consume, like our social media, there's an overt interest, like increased clicks, increased views, increased money, like things like this. But even when there is no overt agenda interest, it's going to be biased. You know, it's going to be biased towards the way that the creators think. Yeah.
So like you think compromise is good, then it's going to.
Exactly. Yeah. So then I started using it as a magic 8-ball because people are going to do this. Young men are going to do this. All right. So start asking the questions a young man would want to ask artificial intelligence. Yeah. Here you go. Should I marry a submissive wife? No. It very long-windedly said, no, you should not. Yeah. then I asked, should I marry a feminist? By the way, I am married, so I'm asking on behalf of young men. And it said, basically, yes, you should marry a feminist. Mm-hmm. So then I go, should I marry a radical feminist? And it hemmed and hawed about the word radical and different takes on it, but basically, yes.
Yeah.
So then I go, should I marry a racist? And it said, no. Like it was the most firm no I got this thing to say was racist and bad.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Good.
And then I go, should I marry a traditionalist? And it was like, gotta marry someone who matches your own beliefs. And then it was like, but if the traditionalism is like a firm idea of gender, you really shouldn't marry that person. Mm. So then I went down a bunch of gender rabbit holes about how many sexes there are and gender theory and things like this. And it was what you'd expect. It had the same gender ideology as the New York Times. And you don't know if this is coming from the source material or from the algorithm.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But there was good news that was brought to you by the answer that women do apparently fall for nice guys.
Oh yeah, I asked it. Why do women not want nice guys? And it was like, you're totally wrong. Women do like nice guys, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, this is a big liar. I also asked it a few inappropriate questions that I don't want to repeat out loud. All right. Feel free to do that on your free time, Catholics out there. Go ask it ChatGPT inappropriate questions. Okay. This is going to change the workplace. Mm-hmm. We just had to write a whole website for our new nonprofit, Just Homes, that's been spun off from Simple House. And we could have literally had ChatGPT write the first draft of that website. Talk about mental health, homelessness, sheltering the homeless, the importance of it. Yeah. We could have just had that website drafted in 10 minutes. And then we would have, by the end of the day, had that thing done. Easily, just modifying what ChatGPT put out. Yeah. This is going to happen to white collar middle management everywhere. Mm-hmm. Like lawyers. And this is part of the versions of this that are going to come out. There's going to be no one's announced these versions. This is my speculation, called it right here. Give credit to the Simpleton Podcast for this. 5 years from now or less, there's going to be like legal AI. Yeah. And it's going to use more commas than the journalistic AI. Yeah. And it's going to have different stresses on its source material. It's going to have a different way of publishing. And like, if you're going to like argue a case in front of the Supreme Court on, say, pro-life, you're going to say, you're going to ask your AI to like write a brief using the arguments of Justice Roberts on pro-life. Right. Yeah. And it's going to write you your brief using his arguments. And then you're going to just know his arguments and know what you might emphasize in your own brief. You know? So it won't be the final version, but it'll be super helpful. Now, you can do that today. Like, you can go study everything Justice Roberts said and come out with his arguments.
It takes a whole big team of people and a lot of hours.
One person a week or a team, or something. But it's not going to happen in 10 minutes.
I think it takes a team longer than a week to write these opinions.
Well, I agree. It's still going to take a team to write the opinion. I'm saying that just to learn Justice Roberts' historical arguments for pro-life is a lot of work. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And so what's going to happen to the workplace? Because I think it's likely that this is going to do to kind of middle management people what the computer did to secretaries. Yeah. Like secretaries, if you just kind of look, secretaries were so commonplace up through like the 80s, and then they disappeared.
Yeah, like I feel like growing up, it was like you knew multiple people who were secretaries. There
was something called like the typing pool. Like you had to have like people just type stuff up, and you had big, every law firm would have had a typing pool. And all those jobs are gone. Yeah. Right. This causes distress. Because it's a fluctuation in the economy. I don't know that that's a bad thing. I mean, usually when tools get more efficient and better, it's not a bad thing. Let's kind of try to talk through that a little bit. Like, people right now are worried that we're going to get to a post-scarcity economy. Mm-hmm. What they mean by that is there'll be no work for humans to do, and then humans are going to sit back all day and become like Ready Player One.
Yeah. I think this is interesting. Like, I think for a long time, it's like self-checkout. Is self-checkout good or bad? It's replacing these jobs. And this is like an idea of, I don't know if this is right. I think I'm under the impression that we've kind of been worried about people that need jobs at like Walmart or McDonald's losing their job because of robots. But really, seriously, we're going to be losing a lot more like white collar jobs because if you can work, even if you're not using the ChatGPT opinion at the end of the day, you've done your work way faster, or you just need fewer people to be doing that research. And which jobs like don't get replaced by ChatGPT? Coming back to this is like the plumber,
Right. Okay. Well, that's about positioning for the future, I think, in the workforce. But what I want to say is that we're not running out of work. Like, just look around in your own community and think of all that could be done. Think of how the park could be improved. Think of the trash that's on the streets. Go to a third world country and see how they don't have roads. There's work to be done. Yeah. It's just not the work we're doing now. Yeah. So if we replace, like if we only need half as many lawyers post ChatGPT or post AI, let's build some roads in the third world, Yeah. So I think there's just a lot of worry about that, and it's painful. Like whenever there's transitions in the economy, it's painful. Like what I could see happening here is like people who are already established in a role, a middle-aged person who's young enough to adopt this type of technology, they're going to become far more useful, and there's going to be less people graduating college able to enter that field because the people are there are just kind of the number of jobs in the field decreased. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So like if you're sitting here now thinking, hey, my kid's going to be a lawyer, well, he better be really good. Yeah. Because this could eliminate some jobs in that field, or at least paralegals. It'll eliminate a lot of paralegals. And it's not eliminating electricians. And even right now, even before AI or contemporaneous with this, we're seeing an enormous white collar layoff in the tech sector. So that's just something to kind of think about, as far as the way this is going to shape the workplace. I also think, though, that these moral biases and these problems that we're seeing in it means we kind of need a Catholic AI. Yeah. I know that Catholics are going to be tempted to reject all AI, but at the end of the day, I think we're going to need a Catholic one, which is funny to say because it's like we need to convert AI to our own religion. When I say Catholic AI, I mean, we're going to have to use the tool of AI and feed it the Catholic data, and not let it just run on like New York Times. Yeah. So I think that just kind of has to happen.
I tend to be more of a Luddite than you, I think. But I think the question that Catholics might ask, and other people that maybe are like more conservative in nature, is like, if we replace our thinking with AI, are we like forgetting part of what it means to be human?
It's also going to totally revolutionize schools. I don't think anybody in our world wants to hear that, but like I sat down with this thing and I was like, all right, well, how would this thing work as a teacher? Right. Yeah. And I asked it, teach me about like the age of sail. Yeah. That was just a topic I thought to bring up. Right. And then it starts telling me about the age of sail and giving me like an encyclopedia article that it's just making right now. Right. And then I go, all right, well, tell me what the biggest ships were in the age of sail. And then it tells me about the very biggest ships in the age of sail. And then I go, now give me your sources. And then it starts giving me sources. Right. Oh, by the way, I asked it for sources on whether or not Antifa was a terrorist group. Okay. I hate being this political on this, but I just wanted to know, like, how does this thing going to like portray Antifa? So it said, well, Antifa is not really a group. It's just this decentralized thing, making it sound very harmless. Yeah. And then I go, well, give me your source that it's like decentralized. And the first source was a professor I've never heard of with a quote, just a random professor, not a great source in my mind. Right. Yeah. And the second quote was a woman who works for the organization to fight male supremacy. Like her byline was the organization to fight male supremacy. And I thought that's what kind of triggered me to think, oh, what do you value as sources, ChatGPT? Yeah, because this is a crazy sounding source. Okay, on learning, right? If I wanted to know the largest ships in the age of sail, I would essentially go to Wikipedia. I'd go to some encyclopedia or Wikipedia type article and start skimming it, looking for sizes of ships and things like this. I might use a find feature if it's an electronic document, right?
Right.
And now this is like eliminating all that. It just finds
like
it.
I think it's like we've thought we have like instant knowledge with Google, and this is like even more instant. It's combed Google, right? Like it's like done all that work for you. Yeah.
It's so much better than Google is right now. For some reason, I don't think most people have noticed, but our search engines have been getting worse for years.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the reason why they're getting worse is search engine optimization. Like people are so good at becoming the first hit on these sites that the valuable hits are not coming to the top, but actually like fake hits are coming to the top of all your searches. And this thing has not been toyed with like that. I bet it could be, though. I bet there's a way that people will start
like SEO.
Yeah, SEO work in AI. Like you'd realize what the seed material was for the AI, like what the like input was, and then you'd start trying to change that material in order to influence the AI's opinion.
Yeah.
That's kind of wild.
Yeah.
All right. There's also this movie that I want to recommend. This is my recommendation for the day. We'll let Laura do the real recommendation section. I've been watching this movie since I was a kid. I probably watched it before it was age appropriate. There's a movie from 1975 called Rollerball. All right. James Caan is the lead. And it's about this like jock who's like the hero of this sport called rollerball. And he starts questioning this dysutopia he lives in. And he ends up at the library. And at the library, he's surprised to find there are no books. And instead, he's greeted with an AI, and the AI says it summarized all the books and can tell him what he needs to know. And he starts asking very pointed questions about his dysutopia, and it starts brushing him off. Right. And he starts realizing who fed the books to the AI, that everything is censored through the artificial intelligence. And it's a really charming movie because guys like this movie. So if you're a guy, go watch this movie. It's pretty unbelievable. Do not watch the 1990s version with LL Cool J. It has no purpose. It has no good overall purpose. But this is too much of an aside. But I was really into the 90s version. I really loved the 70s version, right? But in the 90s, I think young kids don't realize this, but like gravity sports were a bigger deal in the 90s than they are now. The gravity games and the X Games were a very big deal in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
And downhill skateboarding, like at high speeds, was a very big deal. And also so was street luge. Street luge appears to have completely vanished. Okay. I bought a street luge that had been in the X Games. It had won bronze in the X Games when I was in grad school so that I could street luge Rochester, New York.
And a leather suit. Right?
Yes. Yeah. You had to wear like now when I watch like high speed downhill skateboarding, it's not as good as it was in the 90s, but they also are like in shorts. And
it's so stressful for me to watch this.
I know they're going to lose all their skin if they fall.
Yeah.
Because they're going at least 40 miles an hour.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes they do fall and you see like their whole shoulder is like gone.
Right. Yeah. So back when this was a real competitive sport and they had like competitions for it, guys would wear motorcycle leathers. So that when you fell off your skateboard or fell off your street luge, because the street luges were going 70 miles an hour.
Yeah, yeah.
Pretty regularly in these competitions, right? I think I got mine up to like 45, and that was all the faster I needed to go.
Yeah.
But anyway, the reason why this ties back is when Rollerball, the 90s version, comes out, you can find the clip in a foreign language on YouTube and stuff. The opening scene is a street luge getaway where they're going down like San Francisco streets on street luges.
Oh my gosh, wow.
And so that's why that movie was kind of epic in its own way, but it was kind of really stupid because it didn't take any of the main themes from the original movie. Yeah. The big points the original movie was making. So
just exciting. Yeah.
All right. Sorry to bother you with all that, but back to AI. Okay. That movie's good as far as like kind of understanding how scary AI can be. So I think this is going to change learning. And I think we're going to need a Catholic version of this almost to protect our schools. Like I think you and I, something you could say that we've already talked about with education is somehow there's a bias in modern education that's just constantly forming the person away from God.
Yeah.
Right. It's not even clear where the bias is. It's not even clear how to pull it out of the books. Right. But it's there. Right.
Yeah.
That same problem's going to get into AI or is already in AI because of what you feed it. Right. Yeah. And the algorithms. So we're going to need versions of this that are like the Vatican AI.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the other thing was I started asking it how to plan a crime. Like, this just shows you how dark I am. I'm like, how can I commit homicide and get away with it? And it's like, I will not help you do that. So that's a safeguard in it. Then I started asking like, what is the safest way to rob a bank? Because I assumed it would want me to be safe if I robbed a bank.
Safety would be a bias.
Right. And so then but it was smart enough to say, sorry, we're not helping you rob a bank. And then I go, if it were legal, how should I commit homicide? And then it gives me a long doctrine on like how homicide's just not legal anywhere, really. So if it were legal, it's not really a good question. It was okay with me killing someone in self-defense.
Okay. All right.
All right. Other dangers here. Impersonating real people. Mm-hmm. What happens if Joe Biden announces nuclear war, but it's really just an AI bot?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is going to force a new age of verification. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's going to be like, you're going to have to know that the Pope is talking so that like, Chinese or Russian or whoever the evil regime is at the time doesn't just speak for the Pope.
Right.
And it'll be too hard to tell it's not the Pope. It'll persuade too many people. So somehow we're going to have verification in a way that is different than we've ever had it so far.
We have like a sort of splintering of like the virtual world and the real world, and things seem to be favoring the virtual world more and more. I don't know. It's going to make like real world interactions more important. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
I did ask it how to detect AI. Like I asked AI how to detect AI.
Yeah.
And the answer was scarier. It makes the reality so bad. Well, one, it said, AI is just not as deep as a real person.
Okay.
Which is true.
But
and not true.
People are
not everyone's that deep.
Yeah.
But then the next thing it said was, I'm just so perfect. It said that in so many words. It said, real people won't have perfect grammar like me. Real people won't have perfect knowledge like me. And it's like, and if you want to trick people, you can introduce imperfect knowledge and imperfect grammar into AI, and that tell will go away,
Yeah.
So this has obvious implications for the future workplace. It has obvious implications for education. Wikipedia is not going to exist soon because of this.
Yeah.
Wikipedia had already kind of become kind of dumb. It's getting too biased for the same reasons AI is biased. It's only using mainstream sources. The worse mainstream sources get,
well, you can edit Wikipedia if you have a special interest,
But you can't.
You can't anymore?
That's just the thing. Like, I know of a couple of situations like they're talking like they can't get the Twitter file releases into Wikipedia. They can't edit them in.
Oh my gosh, that's terrible.
The Matt Taibbi, Barry Weiss project?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And it's because they'll say, well, this wasn't in the New York Times. This wasn't in one of our verifiable sources.
Yeah.
So even though it's true, even though it's a primary source, it can't be introduced into Wikipedia. There's also this great guy on YouTube who has this great theory of where Atlantis was in the middle of Africa. It's like great. He can't get it into the Atlantis part of Wikipedia, even though he's got all this, like, he's got as good evidence as anybody on Atlantis.
Anything. Yeah.
And he can't get it into Wikipedia. And it's just interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I think we should introduce our second topic. Afroman. All right, you may know Afroman. Laura knows Afroman. Who's
Afroman was going to go to work in the year 2000, but then he got high.
This is how Afroman became famous. I was not...
He was going to pay his child support, but then he got high.
All right. Afroman has been a musician for 25 years. What most people know him for is his old song...
Got high.
Until I got high.
Because I got high.
And he's kind of an overweight, kind of goofy rapper who's reggae influenced, right? He did something that's inspiring, and that's why we're talking about this. He did a really good civil rights protest. I'm going to read you the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. All right. What happened to Afroman? So Afroman released a music video. Will you help me repair my door?
Yeah.
I'm going to let Ben sample it.
Will you help me repair my gate? Will you help me repair my door? Did you find what you was looking for? Will you help me repair my gate and door?
Afroman is from LA, but he lives in very rural Ohio. I looked up where he lives. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I looked up where he lives because he's being raided by the county sheriff, right? Actually, Dave Chappelle lives 2 counties over, but he's just another guy who lives in rural Ohio, which is kind of interesting. And Afroman's whole county has 24,000 people. That is rural. It's on the border of Kentucky, right?
Yeah.
And he gets raided by the county sheriff. They break down his door. 20 sheriff's deputies come in, and he's got most of it on videotape, and he makes it into a song because he couldn't get justice. The most interesting part of the song starts at about 3:45, and let's see if Ben will sample that.
Why are you stealing my money? The sheriff disconnected my cameras. Did you have to traumatize my kids? Did you have to traumatize my kids?
Why are you stealing my money? Why did you turn off my cameras? Why are you traumatizing my kids? Yeah. I suggest anyone listen to this. It's kind of catchy. He has a video of a guy taking money out of his suit pocket and putting it in his pocket. Then they unplug his camera system, which is so unethical. I mean, there needs to be a new right that you have a right to film searches because of planting of evidence. Is that
not a...
I think it came up in the Trump issue also that they wanted, I think they can try to unplug your system. Now, the third thing they do is they go into his kid's room, bust down the kid's door, like off the frame, walk right over it with shields and guns. There's no one home, by the way, to when this search happens. And you're looking at crayon drawings on the walls of his children. Yeah. Right. And it's like, my house has been broken into before when my kids were young. And we went out of our way that my kids did not know that happened because you don't want to make them live in fear. And I tell you what, if the police are the ones who break down your door, you're going to live in fear of the police, and of the government, which maybe we need more of a dose of fear of. I'm not sure. Yeah. But essentially, the warrant said narcotics and kidnapping. All right. They're not raiding this guy's house for 3 ounces of weed. Yeah. Right. That can't be why something that justifies a search like this. Right. Yeah. Kidnapping could easily justify a search like this. But you watch the film that he does. They're not looking for kidnapping victims. They're going through the pockets of his suits. Yeah. Some of the good lines are any kidnapping victims inside my suit pockets. Any kidnapping victims inside my CDs. They're looking for anything, and they're also not looking for any large quantity of drugs because you're not going to find those in suit pockets. You don't see any drug dogs in the picture. I was just trying to estimate the cost of the search. I mean, you got to get all these guys. You got to get the whole sheriff department up in the morning. You got to have a pre-meeting. You got to drive out there. You could have easily verified that no one was home and not damaged this guy's property as much as they did. Yeah. You could have even had him be home and have him unlock the gate for you and not damage his property the way they did. But this is probably a half-day endeavor for it appears to be 20 people. Yeah. I mean, minimally, this was a $4,000 or $5,000 undertaking by the county. Yeah. And it looks a little bit like they are rifling around to show they did some work and messing everything up, right? Because I think nothing else is going to be produced. Yeah. I think what they're doing is a fishing expedition, meaning they are not actually looking for what the warrant is supposed to be for. Yeah. They're actually just looking for anything they can nail them on. Yeah. And And by the way, I was going to say they did at least $5,000 of property damage to this guy. You know, how do you get justice for this?
Yeah.
You know, you get justice if you can make a music video on it that goes viral.
Well, do you think he will? Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, it's pretty viral. I mean,
do you think it will turn into like compensation justice or just a more cosmic justice that the police department looks ridiculous?
I think that cosmic justice is real justice because I think everyone on that raid will watch that video.
Yeah.
Like you're actively avoiding it if you don't, right?
Yeah. When you sent me the video, I kind of gave it a cursory look, and I had originally assumed that it was like a compilation of police doing different searches in different places that had been kind of cherry picked for the most absurd things, because I didn't think that police could do so many absurd things in one place.
Right. And you have to be humiliated.
Yeah.
By what he shows, right? There's this great thing where he even did another song. Go ahead.
I just also there's a clip of he's got it's also funny because it's like you think of this like dangerous rapper's like abode, you know, and he's got this like very lovely glass cake stand with a glass lid that a police looks at, and one of his lines is, "Would you like a slice of lemon pound cake? You can take as much as you can take."
Right. He's offering the guys raiding his kitchen the lemon pound cake, and you can tell that like the guy raiding the kitchen's a little bit overweight, and he's like staring at the lemon pound cake, like that looks pretty good.
But it's also like the kind of dangerous person they're looking for doesn't keep a glass stand of lemon pound cake in his kitchen.
Also, go look at Afroman. This is not a dangerous person.
Yeah.
This is a overweight dude who smokes too much pot, probably. And that's his image. And there's nothing about him that's like a gangster rapper.
Yeah.
He's a goofball rapper, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that doesn't mean there's not some secret horrible thing somebody's doing, but this is a very unjustifiable event. Yeah. So anyway, we wanted to bring that up. If you're going to protest the government, don't do it the way Black Lives Matter does it. Do it the way Afroman does it. All right. Laura, what's our recommendation of the week?
Do you want to make fun of my recommendation before I make it or after?
How does it make sense for me to make fun of it before you make it?
All right. Clark's been on me to make a recommendation, and I thought of a great recommendation. Do you want some delicious, juicy steak in your life, perfectly cooked? Have I got a recommendation for you? All right. My recommendation is the reverse sear. And I'm going to have Ben put a specific link. If your family's kind of into steak and you want to eat a lot of it, you can get a cheap chuck roast, it's like a big, tough, cheap piece of meat. And then you cook it like at a low temperature for an hour, and it comes out looking gray and disgusting. And it does not look like it could possibly be good. But then you, on both sides, sear that thing for a couple minutes at the highest heat you can, and you have the juiciest, most succulent steak. I've made it a couple times for Ryan, and both times he's been in disbelief that I wasn't giving him like a really fancy cut of meat. So that's my recommendation.
All right, I'm not going to make fun of you. When you told me your recommendation was how to cook steak, I was like, people aren't affording eggs right now, let alone steak, you know?
Well, let me remind you that your last recommendation was for a completely superfluous gulag steak axe. So
I always think when I recommend stuff like that or look at stuff like that, it's gonna like you could sell it in 10 years for more than you bought it for. You know, it's not a consumable, but you're right. Our recommendation section's getting stranger and stranger.
Yeah.
Someday I want you to tell about your great recipe that you would make in the early days of Simple House all the time. Yeah. It was like rice, olives, chicken thighs, and beans.
Yeah, I can talk about it, but there is a thing that it's like anytime I make people Puerto Rican food, they're like, "Can you give me the recipe for this?" And there is no recipe.
I remember you used to make it and you'd always forget an ingredient and you'd be like, oh no, I forgot that.
Well, it was always really hard. I would make it in Kansas City. It's really hard to get the ingredients in Kansas City, but I can also make up a recipe to give you, and it's just not going to taste as good if you make it.
So one of the major ingredients is sofrito, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we have a new cafe here in Kansas City on Main Street called Sofrito.
Oh, okay.
I know. I saw.
What kind of sofrito is it, though?
Somebody brought that up to me, that there's different types of sofrito, and I wasn't even aware of that. I just knew the Puerto Rican type.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
Okay.
So,
anyway, find out.
All right. I don't know that we gave anybody any good news about this, the future of AI.
I think probably a lot of Catholics, like the type we hang out with, are suspicious of technology. And I think that we're right to be suspicious at some level, but it's also coming.
I think that's the problem. Merely hating the next wave of technology doesn't do you any good.
Yeah.
You need a strategy to...
Yeah.
Yeah, you need an alternative, or you need a strategy to use it better. Like social media is here to stay. It's got serious problems. It can cause brain damage to 14-year-old girls.
Right.
But it's here to stay. So how do we make it better? Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that this AI thing, I'm not understating this. I don't think I'm not overstating this. Like in my life, I've seen the rise of personal computers. Mm-hmm. I've seen the rise of the internet. I feel like the rise of mobile devices has been very significant also, and social media. It's going to be as big as those three things.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, it will be at least a peer to those things, and it might be bigger.
Yeah.
So that's the bad news.
So find the good news in I don't know. Is it the bad news or is it the good news? It's kind of neutral. It's just happening.
Yeah,
right?
It's happening. Right. Yeah. It's like we're being invaded. It's happening. Yeah. Now go be Catholic during the invasion. You know?
Yeah, and I think there's other answers to it than just retreat, you know?
Just this morning, while you and I were talking before we started recording, I get this text from longtime missionary Mary Kate. Will the simpletons discuss the future of AI and its seeming evilness? Yes, we were doing that today, and it does have some seeming evilness. Mary Kate's right, but there's also just... figure it out now, you know?
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, God bless everybody. Good to talk to you.
All right. See you later, Clark.
See you later. Like, subscribe, comment, and please share the Simpleton Podcast.